I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, guys. You can be seated now. Hello. My name is Carrie Berlin. I am one of the local organizers here in the greater Manchester area. Who is excited to see Joe Biden today? Woo! Yeah. Thank you so much for coming out. I am here to talk to you about one of the many reasons why I support Vice President Joe Biden. Last spring, I went to a concert with my then boyfriend. It was supposed to be a celebration and a concert for our anniversary. On the way home from that concert, we began to argue. It was over something small, trivial even, but by the time that we got to his house, what started as an argument quickly escalated into physical violence. In the span of a few minutes, I watched as that man raised his hand to me, and I felt the impact of that on the entire left side of my face. Now I went to bed devastated that night. I had never felt more hollow than I had felt crying myself to sleep about a person that I thought I was supposed to fully and completely trust. I'm not proud to admit it, but I stayed with him for a lot longer than I should have, because like a lot of survivors, I excused his actions. I have since learned that domestic violence is about control, power. And after that night, I felt like he had both while I had none. I quickly learned that because of all of the hard work that Vice President Biden had done in 1994, the Violence Against Women Act was passed. In the 25 years since then, it has helped countless women and men. And last year, it even helped me. Yes. Thank you. Now, because of those events, it was never a title that I thought that I would have, a survivor of domestic violence. I quickly became motivated to fight, to protect and stop the normalization of domestic and sexual violence that is in our culture. It's one of the reasons why I joined Team Joe. We need a president that will defend, support, and believe survivors. Vice President Biden has proven time and time again that he hears us, that he stands with us, and that he is willing to fight this fight with us. So the time is now for us to fight this fight with him. We need to stand by him. Yes. All right. Now, I know that story is hard to hear. It's hard to tell, and I lived it. And as difficult as it is to look back on the past sometimes, it fires me up to think about the future, and specifically to February 11th, 2020, if I might add. Yeah, mark it down. So I want to ask something of you guys. If you could take out your phones for me, I want to see them, hold them up. Just have a quick favor. All right, if you could text 2 simple letters for me. It's going to be NH to the numbers 30330. I'll repeat it for you. It's NH to 30330. Join this fight with us. And then I want you to look around you and see some of my amazing coworkers, teammates, our interns, our fellows, and everyone in between that are in those super bright white Biden shirts that you truly can't miss. And I want you to find one of them after Vice President Biden speaks. And I want you to join us in this fight. Knock some doors. I want you to spend a Saturday with us. We're a ton of fun, I promise. And then make phone calls if you can't do that. Enter data if you don't feel comfortable with that. But do anything that you can, because we need you, you guys. I promise we can't do it on our own. So join this fight with us, and let's elect Joe Biden as the next president. All right. Well, I appreciate you waiting so long and taking the time to listen to me speak. And I would now like to introduce our state representative, Richard Comey.
Good evening, and welcome, fellow Democrats. I am supporting Joe, and I'll tell you why I'm supporting him. Joe is what I call a Democrat. He is a Democrat by conviction, not by convenience. Joe is the leader we need to unite our nation and restore the middle class, and that's why I'm supporting him. Since he took office at a young age of 29, Joe has been involved in every piece of progressive legislation that has ever been passed. If he did not craft the legislation himself, he was right there to point the way. That is what I call a Democrat. Joe has fought for all kinds of rights that you can think of for the middle class. He has fought for LGBTQ rights. He has fought for minority rights. He has fought for women's rights. He has even fought for healthcare rights. What can be better than that? But let me tell you, Joe is the only candidate that can beat Donald Trump, and I mean beat him like a drum. He has taken on the NRA, and he won twice. And he stood shoulder to shoulder with President Obama and passed the Affordable Care Act, which saw tens of thousands of Granite Staters having health care coverage. Right now, Republicans are fighting to scrap it. But with Joe, health care will not be a privilege, it will be a right. And that's why I'm supporting him. Now, let me tell you, there's a lot that this country needs right now. And Joe is the only leader that can restore this country. He will restore the middle class. He will restore us on the global stage where we have become a mockery. And when we eventually elect him, he will ensure that we build on the Affordable Care Act. And with that, I would like to introduce a fellow Granite Stater who will tell you more about this. And with that, I will introduce Michelle O'Leary.
Wow. I'm a little nervous, but I can't do any worse than that guy in the White House is doing, so. I know I'm in Manchester at least, so we'll start there. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Michelle. I'm a Granite Stater. I'm a school psychologist, and I'm a proud mom of 2 boys. I'm here to tell you about our story. My youngest son's first seizure was on Mother's Day of all days when he was 3 years old. We immediately called 911, and our journey began. We began the MRI, EEG, neurologist, anti-seizure meds, more EEGs, and the fear that every parent with a child who has seizures lives with every day, that he may have a seizure, that he just did not return to us the same. We had no idea that this was just the beginning for us. After some atypical seizures a year after his initial diagnosis, he was rushed to Boston Children's Hospital where some genetic testing was done. We found out a month later that our son had a rare neurodegenerative disease called CLN2, a form of Batten disease. Like many of you, probably all of you, we had never heard of this. My husband and I made the grave mistake of Googling it, and don't ever do that. We read that our 4-year-old, who was a happy boy, would be losing his ability to walk, talk, see, eat. He'd be in a wheelchair by the age 6, and we'd lose him between 8 and 12 years old. This was, as you can imagine, a very dark time for us. Luckily, our son was born in 2010, and during his lifetime, there were many advancements made in genetics and in treatments for rare disease, and those advancements were because of the Obama-Biden presidency and their support for research, their support for the NIH, and we thank them for that, because that is the reason our son is getting a treatment today. He was part of a clinical trial. He was the first in the United States to be treated, and he was able to help the FDA approve this treatment, the first one ever for CLN2. And now, this is just part of our life. He goes into Boston Children's every 2 weeks, as many children now do in the United States who have the same disease, and all over the country, not just Children's. And he gets his biweekly treatments. He does many therapies to keep him strong, and he is strong. So 2020, this election is all about health care for us. If the Affordable Care Act was to go away and insurance companies could start denying coverage or could start putting limits on coverage, my family would not be able to afford even one treatment. We love our private insurance, despite what some people may say. No, not everyone hates their private insurance, believe it or not. And we've also been able to utilize Medicaid. But without that, it's literally the difference between life and death for our son if we don't have that coverage. So our story, this one is one of the many reasons that we're standing with Vice President Joe Biden for 2020. And now it is my extreme pleasure. Please join me in welcoming Vice President Joe Biden.
Good to see you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, please. Thank you very, very much. Mayor, Joyce, thank you for the passport into town, to be able to be here. And Senator D'Alessandro is here, a good friend, and as well as Senator Kevin Cavanaugh. I think he had to, I don't think he can be here tonight, but he was going to be here. I think he's at the Capitol. And Carrie, where are you sitting? I can't see you from here.
Right here. Over here.
There you are. By the way, I think the proudest thing I've ever done in my life was persisting in writing the Violence Against Women Act. And I guess a lot of you do know, because you know women and some men who have been violated. You know, it takes enormous courage to stand up and tell the story. Because every time you do, you relive it. Every time you do, it brings it back. So we owe you, and you have no idea how much courage, how much fortitude you're giving so many other young women and women across the board. So thank you. And Michelle, your son is evidence of what my mother always says: where there's life, there's hope. The fact of the matter is that the changes that we are finding and the research that we've invested billions, and if I must tell you straight up, if I'm your president, we're going to invest a hell of a lot more in medical research. But Michelle, I know how you feel when you get that diagnosis and you read it. But again, there's hope, breakthroughs. How many of you have lost somebody or know somebody, a family member, who has either been lost to and or is suffering from cancer or some other serious disease? Take a look, everybody. I do this at every meeting I have. The fact of the matter is, it's the thing that the nation has in common. And I'm absolutely convinced, Mr. Ambassador, we have the capacity. We have the capacity to fundamentally change cancer as we know it if we make the investments that we need to make, and we can afford to make those investments. And I'm not going to take time to go into detail about that today, but I had before, when I knew I was coming up, I had planned on making some remarks this afternoon that were more traditional remarks that I've made about why I'm running, and to take your questions. But given the gravity of the issues dominating our news today, I thought it was more important to address them somewhat more fully. This is a state that is built on fierce pride, pride in your independence, pride in your reputation, pride in your character. And that has been true from the earliest days of this nation. Live free or die only in recent history became your motto, but it was an imperative for survival, sprung from a granite hard determination that no one in the world would decide the future of America other than we Americans ourselves. And when those freedom fighters, in fact, earned our independence and cobbled together a nation capable of self-governance, of meeting threats by both foreign and domestic opponents, they knew that the battle for our nation didn't end at Yorktown. The fact is, at the time, one of the biggest concerns when we formed this nation was that foreign nations would interfere in our domestic affairs. That's why the founders put in what we call an emoluments clause in the Constitution to prevent any president from being able to be secretly bribed or paid off by foreign governments to do their bidding. It's this, in his farewell address, George Washington specifically warned against foreign nations meddling in our affairs. He said, and I quote, "History and experience prove that foreign influence is one of the most baneful foes of Republican government." End of quote. And over our 200-year-plus history that has followed, there's been a constant, unrelenting vigilance to keep foreign nations out of our elections and out of determining the outcome of our democracy. That's until Donald Trump. Last week, on the White House lawn, President Trump invited China to play a part in deciding our elections. He did it while standing in front of the cameras and reporters like I am right now, in the broad light of day. It was the third foreign power that he's asked, in clear, unmistakable language, to intervene on behalf of the democratic proceedings of the United States. Russia, if you're listening, remember that quote? I would like you to do us a favor, though, end of quote, to the President of Ukraine. Quote, China should start an investigation, end of quote. It's wrong. It undermines our electoral process. It's un-American. Go into any city or town in this state or around the nation, any schoolhouse. Go into any town hall. Go to any VFW post. Go to any football or baseball game or soccer game and ask the question, is it okay for a foreign nation to meddle in our elections, to spread lies about an opponent? That's the answer you'd get, particularly if that request comes at the invitation of a sitting president. The answer is obviously no. As Americans, it offends every bone in our democratic body. And this is not hyperbole. The ballot box is sacred ground in America. It's where we make our voices heard. It's where we decide who leads us. It's where we chart America's future. It's where we fulfill our duty as citizens. It's not complicated. It's called democracy. We believe Americans should decide American elections, period. But Trump will do anything to get reelected, including violating the most basic elements of our democracy. That's stunning. It's dangerous because it directly threatens our democracy. It's not hyperbole. It's a fact. No president in the history of the United States of America has dared engage in such unimaginable behavior. No president has engaged in that. With his words and with his actions, President Trump has indicted himself by obstructing justice, by refusing to comply with congressional inquiry. He's already convicted himself. In the full view of the American people, Donald Trump has violated his oath of office, betrayed the nation, and committed impeachable acts. To preserve our Constitution, our democracy, our basic integrity, I believe he should be impeached. And I do not say that lightly. It's a god-awful thing for the nation to have to go through. But it's not only because what he's done. The answer to whether he's committed acts sufficiently to warrant impeachment is obvious. We see it in his own words. We see it in the text of the State Department officials that have made public. The texts have been made public. We see it in his pulling much of the United States government into his corrupt scheme. But we have to remember that impeachment isn't the only about what a president has done. It's about a president and the threat a president can pose to the nation if we allow him to remain in office. One thing about this president is absolutely clear. He sees no limit on his power. He believes the entire United States government can be corrupted into furthering his personal political gains and needs. He's even willing to hold congressional appropriated aid to a foreign nation fighting for its life hostage to his personal political demands. He believes if he does something, it's legal no matter what it is. And perhaps, most importantly, he believes there is nothing we can do about it. He believes that he can and will get away with anything he does. We all laughed when he announced and said, I could shoot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue and nothing would happen. He'd get away with it. It's not a joke. He is shooting holes as we speak in the United States Constitution. But we cannot let him get away with it this time. Folks, not only here in the United States, but around the world, this is an especially dangerous moment for our nation. Because we know the pressure on Trump is only going to increase. Not because of me, it's just going to increase because of all the things that are happening. And that pressure, as it increases, we know he's going to grow more volatile, more erratic, more self-serving, and more destructive. Ladies and gentlemen, he has at least one more year in office. The United States cannot afford to have a president who will abuse whatever power is available to him in order to get reelected. And here's the kicker. The people around the president knew what he was doing of late and before was profoundly wrong. So they tried to cover it up, hiding the evidence, putting it in a classified zone that no such translations, no such records have been put before. We only know about this because of a courageous action of a whistleblower who has since been joined by others stepping up to protect his country, or her country. The Trump scheme has been exposed. And he did it because, like every bully we've ever known, and every bully in history because he's a coward. He's afraid. He's afraid of just how badly I will beat him in November if I'm out. Folks, he's targeting me and my family with lies and distortions and smears, and that's all they are, because he thinks he will undermine my campaign for the presidency or the nomination. There is not a single bit of truth to any of his charges or attacks against me. None, zero. Every independent news organization has reviewed his charges at length and found them to be flat-out lies. Have you ever heard when a president was speaking for a head of a news organization to interrupt and say, he's lying? No, not a joke. Have you ever seen that? And Trump knows it. My insistence that a prosecutor who was viewed as corrupt be replaced in Ukraine was the official policy of the United States government, supported by a letter signed by leading Republicans in the United States Senate demanding his removal, supported by the European Union as a whole, the International Monetary Fund, which was helping bankroll recovery, and all of our allies, including Ukraine, the UK, Germany, France, and the reformers within Ukraine. What Trump did in Ukraine was to carry out a secret policy for his own personal political benefit. And he believes, like others have in the past century, that if you repeat the lie long enough and consistently enough, it will eventually break through, even though it's a lie. What I did was seek to replace a weak prosecutor with one who we hoped would go after corruption. Corruption that's holding Ukraine back. I spoke to the Rada and made a major speech on why this is the first opportunity for them to actually establish a democracy if they root out corruption. Our European friends were threatening that they would no longer consider funding the Iraqi government and or keeping the Russians in a position where they were paying a price for invading Ukraine. Invading and taking a big chunk of Ukraine. What Trump did was to hold hostage the political support and hundreds of millions of dollars in desperately needed aid to a country at war to advance his own political demands. And now there are reports that not only did Trump send Rudy Giuliani, a man of great integrity, his personal lawyer to carry out his scheme, he co-opted the State Department. As alleged, and I can't prove it, that would be the House to decide, as alleged, allies of Rudy Giuliani were also working a side deal at the same time to make millions of dollars in Ukraine. The abuse of power is the defining characteristic of the Trump presidency. He will do anything it takes to hold on to power, to protect himself, because what happens when he's no longer president? Folks, that's why it's my job, our job, to go out and beat him on the merits, because that is exactly what Donald Trump is most afraid of. He's afraid to face me head on. That's why he's trying to pick his opponent in the Democratic primary. Have you ever heard of a time when the other party was spending tens of millions of dollars to decide who would be their opponent in the middle of the other party's primary? before Americans even get to have their say in the voting booth? Here's a Trump and his special interest paying for his campaign. No, they know I've beaten them in the past, and I will beat them again. And they know I will. They know I'm not just promising change, but I will deliver it. Over the weekend, we had another mass shooting in Kansas City. More individual lives lost to gun violence in the city all across the nation, while Donald Trump is busy inviting the president of the NRA to the Oval Office, making promises behind closed doors in exchange for NRA support for his re-election. I released a bold and comprehensive evidence-based agenda to get weapons of war off our streets and deal with the trauma of gun violence inflicted on our children. Have you seen those television news coverage of children going back to school, learning how to duck, hide behind barriers, building schools where there are abutments they can hide behind? 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 15 years old. But more important than my plan is my promise. I promise you, I will get this reform done. I've taken on the NRA twice, and I've beaten them twice. We made the Brady Bill a law. We banned assault weapons. We limited magazine clips. Many of you are duck hunters. Do you realize under federal law you cannot have more than 3 shotgun shells when you go hunting? Duck? We give people less of a chance. Don't tell me you can't limit. I mean, think about this. It's a federal law. You can't have more than 3 shotgun shells in your weapon. But you can go out and buy a weapon that can hold 100 rounds in it, a clip, a magazine. Folks, we have to remake our education system in this country. My wife's a teacher, like many of you. She says it's best when it comes to education. She said any country that out-educates us is going to outcompete us. Yesterday, I released my plan for education beyond high school in the United States. Because in the 21st century, you all know, 12 years is not enough to get to and stay in the middle class. President Obama asked me to do a study on the jobs of the future. Right now, today, over 6 out of 10 jobs require more than a high school degree to get a job today. Under my plan, anyone who qualifies for community college will be able to go to community college for free. Doing that can cut in half the cost of a 4-year degree in every single state that go to the state universities. Young people are getting crushed by the burden of student debt. My plan will cut undergraduate student loan payments by more than half. If you're making only $25,000 after you graduate and you have debt, you in fact are going to pay less per year, and you won't owe a dime until you make more than $25,000. Interest will not accrue. If you make more than that, only a small percentage of your disposable income, I mean disposable income, after everything from your rent, your food, etc., is declared. And if you choose to go into public service, national service, the National Teachers Program, AmeriCorps, Peace Corps, become a paramedic, counseling victims of domestic violence, or working on the front lines against the battle of climate change, it's a country that's going to help you and provide you. record, my climate plan has gotten very high marks from every environmental organization. This is more a tactic. See, some of Trump's tactics have spilled over. We can't be like Trump, okay? Look, the fact of the matter is that, if you get involved in public service, for every year you're involved, you get $10,000 per year up to 5 years off of your student debt. And President Trump is relentlessly and cynically attacking Obamacare. There's no replacement. He just wants to get rid of it. It doesn't matter how many people get hurt. It doesn't matter if they'll put at risk the pre-existing conditions protections that are in place for over 100 million Americans. It doesn't matter that women will once again be charged more for the same service because of their gender. It doesn't matter that pregnancy will be considered a pre-existing condition. It doesn't hurt that he's raking in a lot of money for his campaign for insurance companies. It's in stark contrast to my plan to strengthen and build on Obamacare with a public option. Medicare, if you want it. Healthcare insurance companies hate it. That's why they're already attacking my plan. They don't want the competition will come from the public option. And drug companies don't want to see their profits cut, which I will do. We know we took on the healthcare industry. We passed Obamacare, and we'll take them on again. That's what they really fear. And they know I can get it done in 5 years, not 10, or some framework. We can get it done. We can get it done now. The same is true with tackling the climate crisis. It's not possible for Trump to do any more for the fossil fuel industry. He turned his back on science. He's pulled America out of the Paris Agreement, which I helped negotiate with President Obama. He's repealed the fuel economy standards that would have saved 8 billion gallons of barrels of gasoline in our administration. And in return, the money's pouring in. We're facing an existential crisis. The U.S. tells us that we have roughly 10 years to deal with the program and the problem. Our administration made the largest single investment in clean energy. It assembled an international coalition to combat climate change. And my plan would ensure that we're on track for 100% clean energy with net zero emissions. I will reassert global leadership and rally the world to raise its ambitions along with ours. What people don't realize, when we wrote that legislation and set up the Paris Accord, the Paris Climate Accord, we put in a provision that every 2 years we up the ante. We up the ante, what has to be done. No one else is going to lead that unless we do. So that's why on day one, I'll rejoin it. And day one, I will invite within the first 100 days all those nations to come to the United States and demand that we, in fact, increase our commitments across the board. And folks, the United States is responsible for 15% of the global warming, of the emissions. The rest of the world is responsible for 85%. If we do everything perfectly, we're still in deep trouble. That's why it's so important that we move quickly. In the first 10 years, between now and 2030, to make significant progress on reducing emissions. Significant progress. The only way to solve this challenge with clear eyes and a clear plan is demonstrable leadership to get the rest of the world to act together. That's what's at stake in 2020. That's why this election is so important. And that's why we're not going to let Donald Trump pick the Democratic nominee for president. Folks, I'm not going to let him get away. He picked the wrong guy to pick a fight with. I'm I'm not going to be distracted by his lies, his distortion, his name calling. None of these attacks are true, and I'm going to stay focused on your lives. That's what this election is about. Your lives, your kids, your children, your family. You can't wait when it comes to health care, or decent paying jobs, or education, or a rational gun policy, or taking on climate change. The world can't wait for America to once again lead a stable, peaceful international order, because if we don't, no one else will. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Like JFK said when he spoke about taking the American to the moon, he said, I am unwilling to postpone the work that has to be done. For America, America has enormous possibilities. They're limitless. I want to take that vision, and yes, take the plans, but that's not enough. It takes proven ability to get things done. We're not electing a planner. There is no one in this race who has a stronger record of passing important and consequential election law or legislation than I have. From the Voting Rights Act renewal, to the ban on assault weapons, to the Violence Against Women Act, to Obamacare, to the Recovery Act that kept us from sliding into depression, and so much more. I've been there. I know what it takes to get it done. Let me finish with this. A lot of my opponents say we have to do more than just beat Donald Trump. I agree. We've got some really good candidates as well. I agree. We have to do more than just beat Donald Trump. For future generations, we have to beat him like a drum. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you.